Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JessinoTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to another episode. We're going to be unpacking everything from the Leicester game, talking about the away day masterclass, as I'd like to call it, that Arsenal displayed at the King Power Stadium. We'll go through the disallowed goals, the goal that we got, the individual performances, how important this game was, and also talk a little bit about transfers. So make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel. This is not the preview for Everton. We will get into that tomorrow. Obviously, we have a game against Everton on Wednesday, so I want to make sure that we properly preview that. So that's not going to happen in this particular show, but the next one, that's what we'll talk about. Arsenal. My goodness. What a way to win at the King Power. I mean, I know some people will say that this is not their favorite type of performance because we only scored one goal. But in my mind, these are the types of performances that you need to have in your locker in order to sustain a title challenge. Like every single game is not going to be 3-4-0 or, whatever. And I really prefer the way that we beat Leicester to the way that we beat Aston Villa, although that was exciting. It still left me with questions around our defensive solidity and things like that. And this was the complete opposite. It really felt like Arsenal got back to the basics. We were defending in numbers. We kept our line. We were committed. Our shape was good. And we walked away with a clean sheet with Leicester not having any sniffs at goal. And really, depending on how you think about some of the VAR decisions, we probably should have had 2 or 3 goals. So I'm loving that performance. Away days are really, really difficult. I really think that people underestimate how difficult it is to go back-to-back away games at grounds with teams that can hurt you and to walk away with the 3 points consistently. Arsenal are the best away team, in the league. We have more points from away, We have more points from away games than anybody else in the league. And I think I read this correctly that Arsenal's away wins are actually more than the wins that Chelsea have had in their entire season. So just our away points alone is more than what Chelsea has in their totality of their season so far. And that's how good Arsenal have been away from home. I do think there's a little bit of looseness at the Emirates. Maybe it's because we know we have the crowd behind us, so we're not as concentrated and we know we can score more goals there. But man, away from home, some of the performances that we put in have been excellent. And so from my perspective, the Leicester game was a 10 out of 10. It was a 10 out of 10 for me. Obviously, some people would have preferred way more goals and, for us to be more open. But, man, we shut Leicester out of that game completely. And it was the most comfortable I felt in weeks. We watched Arsenal go away to Goodison Park, and that was really, really uncomfortable. I mean, some of the chances that Everton got, I was like, I haven't seen us concede chances like this before. And really, we could have lost that game 3-4-0 if they had been more clinical. We played Brentford at home, which we kind of know what happened in that game. Then we played Manchester City at home. But, man, it feels like the second half against Aston Villa plus the entire game against Leicester is Arsenal getting back to their best, and we're still missing some of our most important players. Not only that, we're giving some significant minutes to players that can be really important in the long term. So yeah, I'm absolutely loving what I saw against Leicester. Let's see. Diallo says, friends of Leo Trossard, we gather here. Peace. Yeah, we're gonna obviously have like a long conversation about Trossard because I think his performance was great as well. Alekin Syndrome says the most dominating game we've ever played. I think it was pretty dominant. I mean, Leicester didn't have a sniff, right? Tim says need to dominate Everton and bang in about 5 goals. Well, I would love 5 goals, but I would just take the 3 points because obviously we know that is the game. You get those 3 points and things are looking really bright going into the final stretch. Let's see. Day and Sola says Leandro down the middle again. I wouldn't mind seeing that as well. Just before we really get into it, I do want to just, say one thing. Rest in peace to Stephen Featley. He has passed away today or this morning from a long time battle with, I think, a liver disease or something like that. And he was an Arsenal fan, and Gabby Martinelli actually dedicated his goal against Leicester to Stephen. And it was a really nice gesture. And Stephen, had his own YouTube channel. He was really close to some of the Arsenal content creators in this community. And so thoughts and love go out to his family and friends, which in a very sad time, I'm sure, for the people that are close to him. But I just wanted to put that out there because even though I didn't know him personally, he's a part of the community. So obviously we love all of our Gooners no matter what. And there's very sad news this morning, but I just wanted to say something before we really, really got into it. Mafia Boss says rest in peace. Just very, very sad news this morning. But getting into the nitty gritty of it all. Obviously the game starts, not even the game, like let's go back to the lineup. There is somebody on Twitter that has really, or I don't know if they're on Twitter or not. I don't think they're on Twitter. I think they're on some sort of forum, a Reddit forum or Facebook forum or something like that. And they seem to know what's going on lineup wise for Arsenal, because before the game started, hours before the game started, I started seeing that news trickle onto Twitter about Trossard starting through the middle because Eddie Nketiah was carrying a little bit of an injury. So that was interesting. There's definitely somebody that has some information. But it's interesting because now with knowing Jorginho is going to play and seeing Trossard be the number 9, I didn't feel any sort of like, oh my gosh, we're going to lose this game. We're losing. We don't have one of our best players. We don't have this. We don't have that. Like, I felt very calm with that news. And to be honest, I was excited to see it because Trossard, from my perspective, and I think a lot of other Arsenal fans' perspective, is more similar to Gabby Jesus than maybe Nketiah is in terms of link-up play and creativity. And at the beginning of the season, we really saw a lot of interchangeability and fluidity between the front three of Martinelli, Jesus, and Saka. And we've lost a little bit of that with Nketiah. Now, that doesn't mean that Nketiah hasn't played well. He really has, and he's done a really good job in himself. But I do think that we do want to see what other players can do in those positions and see if we can unlock Martinelli again, because Martinelli, even though I thought a lot of the form was just because he wasn't playing well at the time, it was exacerbated by the fact that he wasn't getting that interchange off the left flank with the center forward like he had with Jesus. And I think Trossard did a really good job at that. He had a lot of good link-up play, a lot of little creative moments with nice little flicks and layoffs to some of the midfielders. He played really nicely with Odegaard and Xhaka and Zinchenko in the first half. And I thought he earned some really good fouls for us. His pressing was good. He wasn't lazy with his defense, like he was committed defensively. And I thought he made a really good account of himself. This is somebody who has been in the league for a while, so it's not like I thought he would struggle to learn how we play, but there's still going to be a little bit of a time before he really starts to understand his teammates and things like that. But in the few games that he has played, in the few minutes that he's put together, to have a goal, an assist, and potentially a goal that should have stood as well against Leicester, I think this is what you want from a player coming in January to help you down the stretch. And I love that performance from him. I thought, this is a real option for Arsenal. If we're not really feeling like Nketiah can play and Jesus is not ready, you can continue to play Trossard down the middle and we're not really missing a beat. And his connection at the beginning of the second half for Martinelli's goal was something that I feel like we would have seen Jesus do. Because we know Martinelli is more of he's a winger, but he has to have that combination play and he's more of a striker, so getting him closer to the goal is better for him. And it was nicely taken by him, but just in terms of what Trossard did for that goal, I thought this is a real option. This is a real option for Arsenal, and I'm happy to see it. Let's see what you guys are saying. Dan Zola says, just sometimes I feel Nketiah is lazy in his pressing. To be honest, like I just feel like we've lost our press with Nketiah, like in general. And I don't know why that is, because he seems to be the type of player that sometimes really harasses the goalkeepers and defenders and stuff. We even saw it against Aston Villa. Like he nicked the ball off of Konsa and was able to get the ball to Martin Odegaard. He should have put that ball away. So sometimes he does it and sometimes he doesn't. But when he doesn't do it, it's really noticeable. And yeah, I don't know, like he's carrying an injury, so maybe that has a little bit of to do with it. But I really thought Trossard did a really good job. Let's see. Social Join says he's not lazy, not at fitness level to do it. Bro Pro says, yeah, he is great in that game, except maybe a situation where I think he could pass open to Saka. Adrian says, in hindsight, our January signings have worked out well. Breath of fresh air to have rotation with players who can affect our games. I think there's also like just something to be able to like just have players that have experience coming in. I think we've had a lot of young players come through at Arsenal, and they're doing a lot of developing and learning, but having players that have experience in the league and know who they are and know how to just kind of like step in and do their job has been really useful for Arsenal. Like if we had gotten Mudryk / Caicedo, what would it look like in terms of like down the stretch for Arsenal without really gaining that experience from like a Jorginho and a Trossard? Like, not saying that we it was like it's perfect. I do think that I would prefer Arsenal to get their number one targets, but I do think there's something to be said. Like, I'm not sure Mudryk does what Trossard is doing so early on in his Arsenal career. I'm not sure Caicedo has the same passing ability as Jorginho that helped us unlock Aston Villa and also unlock Leicester. So it's interesting to see how our plan Bs have worked out for us. Tony says, agree, we have a squad now and I have confidence in almost every lineup. That's, for me, that's the best feeling, is when somebody's not available, but we see the changes. It's kind of like, oh, this is interesting, or I'm excited to see this, rather than like doom and despair and like down the rabbit hole of, negativity. Like, I like that. And Clip is saying it's leaked lineups on Insta. It's actually not. So linked lineups, they had the information around one of the players that were in the lineup or in the game day squad would not actually play. But there's somebody that's like a literal source on like a Reddit thread or a Facebook group or something like that had the information originally. So leaked lineups does usually get things right, but this is somebody specifically that's like chilling in like a forum somewhere that has information. It's weird. Let's see. Boy says we have like 4 players who could play where Saka plays, and none of them will be half as good. Yeah, I mean, we still have to like get somebody to play off of the right, but I think in terms of centrally and off of the left, we're doing pretty well. Social Join says, for me, it wasn't about Mudryk Caicedo, it was about Edu closing deals. It's better we never overpaid. Fair enough. Make sure you guys are liking this video and subscribing to the channel. So obviously, speaking on Trossard, he had the assist for Martinelli's goal. We'll talk more about Martinelli in just a second. But he had a goal that was disallowed from a second phase, I think off of a corner, where we put the ball in and Danny Ward, punches the ball out. It was a weak punch, and we recirculated the ball. It got to Trossard. He dropped the shoulder, did a little shimmy, and roofs it, with his right foot. And I was like, yes, like I love it. It was a really nice goal, well taken, and the breakthrough that I felt like Arsenal deserved in the first half for being so dominant. Then Danny Ward complains, and all of a sudden VAR gets involved, and they chalked off the goal because they said that Ben White was holding on to Danny Ward's wrist or something like that. Here's my thing about these types of scenarios. It's just like the consistency is just not there for me. If you're going to call that that goal back and disallow it. I need the goal that Aston Villa scored against us at the Emirates to not have stood either, because they were wrestling Ramsdale, and whoever was standing in front of him had their arms hooked around him to the point where he couldn't move, and the ball went into the net. And, at the time I felt like, what happened to protecting the goalkeeper now? Why is the goalkeeper not being overly protected now? But then Danny Ward, he just really wasn't good enough on the cross and got away with it. And we didn't get the goal that I felt like we deserved in that moment. There's also a goal that Spurs had this season where they basically wrestled the goalkeeper to the ground and he fell into the net, and they scored the goal and they didn't call it back. And either you're going to be overly protective and anytime you touch the goalkeeper, it's not a goal, or you're going to let that stuff play on, especially when then you turn around and Saka is wrestled to the ground worse than anything that Ben White did to Danny Ward, and we don't get the penalty. So it's just, for me, it's just always the lack of consistency. If that's a foul, then it's also a foul against, whoever did that against Ramsdale at the Emirates. So it's just the lack of consistency for me, especially because just a couple of minutes later, Saka is wrestled down to the ground and there's nothing called there. So it was really frustrating, but I kind of felt like the goal would come anyway. It's just unfortunate it didn't come as early as it probably should have. Lynn says on Ref Watch this morning, they all said it was a pen. It was, to me, it's an obvious penalty, quite similar to when we were at Old Trafford last season and Maguire wrestled Tomiyasu to the ground on a free kick. You can't just tackle somebody to the ground and nothing happened in the box, like, especially if that player is going for the ball. Like, it's just nonsense. Errol Graham says, hello, Jess, I've missed. Please also, if you have a chance to be with the Arsenal team, who would you be with? What does that mean? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Andrew says, that must be some iron grip Ben White has to prevent the goalkeeper pulling free rubbish call. I kind of agree with that. I think it should have stood, but at the same time, like, my reasoning for feeling it should have stood was also because we were on the receiving end of something like that earlier this season, and the referee acted as though Ramsdale just should have been able to get free from the player that was hugging him like this. Like, you guys can't see me because, hold on, let me see. Like, I'm the player at Aston Villa. They're doing this to Ramsdale. They acted like Ramsdale was supposed to be able to get free from that, and they let the goal stand. So there's just a lack of consistency. And I know it won't always be as perfect, but it feels like every single week we're talking about a VAR situation, and it's annoying. I think I don't know. It's really annoying. Amir says, I can understand disallowing the goal. If it was against us, I'd be livid, but it's the inconsistency in VAR for me. It's bad when Dermot Gallagher thinks it's a pen. Yeah, because he never thinks anything that happens to Arsenal is wrong. So yeah. Let's see. We've had a couple of goals scored on us this season, similar to the one called off at Leicester. Exactly. But I will say that in this inconsistency, what you can count on is that some things will go your way and some things won't. And so from my perspective, I don't really like to spend too much time on the VAR and the refereeing. I think the only one that stands out to me the worst is Brentford, because the job just wasn't done at all. And like, that for me stands out as a grave error. But I file this right under the category of, you win some, you lose some, because VAR is not that great and the people that are managing it are just not that great at their jobs. And just like we I feel like maybe got the call for Nketiah getting the penalty against Manchester City. It was kind of like one of those. This one went against us, so I'm not going to spend too much time like being upset by it. But, it's just one of those things where you look at it and you're just like, what? Lynn says, when I looked at at that Harry Barnes was the one impeding his goalie unless Ward hadn't gone to the ref. It would have stood because it wasn't that obvious. Yeah, because a lot of people were like, they were like, how did they see it? How did they see it? It was because Danny Ward complained. And then they were like, oh, yeah, let's look at it. You know, it's just one of those really annoying ones. But what I love about this game is that we just kept plugging along until we got the goal because we knew it would come. And we just need to persevere beyond some of these refereeing decisions. I think, obviously, sometimes they can really cost you, but you know, if you're a good team and you believe in what you're doing, a lot of times you can persevere beyond the refereeing. And so, and I'm glad that we did that. 100%. George says, even us Leicester fans were singing F VAR on that Trossard goal. It ruined the game big time. Richie Rabbit said, the question you should be asking is why it keeps happening to the same time. Why it keeps happening like to us all the time. I don't know. Like, it's not that I guess because I don't want to get into a tinfoil hat land and thinking that there's a conspiracy against Arsenal and stuff like that, because I do feel like some things go our way and other things don't. And what I really would prefer is just them be better at their job so they can get more things right. You know what I mean? And so, and I think if we're good enough, we'll persevere beyond it. But it does feel like every week we're talking about it. And that's what's really, really annoying. Boy says they just don't like Arsenal, bro. They can tolerate everyone else, but we're just a different prospect. And maybe that's true. I don't know. I want to feel like our destiny is in our hands, if that makes sense. Like, I want to feel like we have all the control to make things happen the way that we want. And I don't want us to feel like we can't win beyond. Do you know what I mean? We can't persevere beyond it. So that's why I try not to take too much time on it, but I understand it's really, really frustrating. So anybody who's frustrated by it, I completely understand 100%. And then obviously, you know, you had the Saka penalty shout. We already kind of talked about that. I think it should have been a penalty. You can't just wrestle somebody down to the ground, and it's annoying. And then you also had the goal that was chalked off, the Saka goal that was chalked off, where I still didn't see lines drawn. And from my perspective, like, it may have just been offside. It looked really close, Martinelli being offside. But I need to see effing lines now. Like, ever since the Lee Mason situation, like, I just need to see lines, because that makes me feel like they need, really what they need is what they had in the World Cup. They have to have the automated offside decision thingy. Like, they have to have it, because it just makes it so much easier and quicker, and then you can just see it. I feel like I should always have the benefit of seeing the lines drawn, so I can see the red or the green and see where the line is and where the angle was drawn. Just not seeing it alone just pissed me off, because I'm like, why am I not seeing it? Why sometimes do I see it and other times I don't? It's annoying, you know, so it may have just been offside, which is so unfortunate because it was a really nice goal, but I need to see the lines, you know, I really do. Please get the automated, you know, goal or offside technology, just like the goal line technology. I just think things like offside really should just be, they're so cut and dry. It really can't, it's not subjective at all. So just get the automated thing in there so that they don't have to make the decision themselves, because they can't do it. I just need to see the lines. That it really irritated me that we didn't see it. Let's see. Saida says it's super shady that they show the lines for some and not for others. Exactly. I just feel like that would just elite. Like, if I just see it, then I'm just like, okay, cool. Richie Rabbit says, all due respect, Jess, I don't think you're aware of the history of antagonism towards Arsenal Football Club for being a Southern metropolitan team. I do understand those, like, historically, it has felt like, I think Clive said it best, that Arsenal have always felt like a foreign entity entering English football. And because of those reasons, there's been like this underlying bubbling hate for Arsenal for a very long time. And so I completely understand all those dynamics. But from my perspective, because I don't think anything from a refereeing perspective is going to change, I think they will get rid of people and bring in very similar individuals anyway. From, as an Arsenal fan, and an Arsenal fan that's watching a really good team play, I want to feel like destiny is in our hands. So it's not about not knowing the history and understanding that there's always been a little level of disdain for Arsenal from English football fans and kind of like feeling like Arsenal are a foreign club and all that kind of stuff and like who we've recruited and stuff like that. I understand that. I really, really do. It's just the teams of the past that have had very similar situations have always persevered. And so I want to talk about how we can make sure that we still win games despite having to play against 12 men all the time. Does that make sense? I completely understand that aspect of things, but I don't want to get bogged into, hey, like we can't win because we're against, because we've won despite things being against us. You know what I mean? That's what I feel like we have to have that. We have to have a winner's mentality. Winner's mentality is no matter who's against us, we will win no matter what. Not, thinking that those situations are always going to go against us so we can't win. Let's see. Oh, you guys are saying Jesus won't be back for another 2 weeks. Let's check that out. Taking so long. AFC hopeful of having Jesus back in the squad before the international break. Okay, well, I saw that the other day as well. Like, I don't think that that's like out of the. I think I said Bournemouth to be the game that I thought he'd be on the bench. So, hopefully it's that game. So we'll see. Let's see. Lynn says, and also, for example, the Brentford game, if they were to get into the top 4 because of those 2 points we dropped, they would have gained a lot of money. So that's where exactly. And that is the one call from this season that I do feel like we can feel totally aggrieved by, because it just was so blatantly poor, like in terms of not actually drawing the lines and it being blatantly offside as well. And so I completely understand that aspect of things, but I do file the Trossard one in the in the file of you win some, you lose some, because they just are shit. Let's see. Reggie says, Jess, now that the TV deals are getting larger and more global, do you think the Prem will sue the EFL to bring in their own refs from anywhere on the planet? To be honest, I don't know. I don't know. I think here's my thing though as well, Reggie, and like, I've spoken to several people about this, and I think that referees being, bad at their job, biased, cheaters, whatever narrative you want to run with, them being inconsistent also adds to the drama of the Premier League. And I think they're less concerned about getting things right than than keeping the performative nature of the Premier League ticking. Like the whole thing about going to VAR and looking at the monitor, all of that is performative. Like none of that really has to happen. Like I think referees sometimes getting it right, sometimes getting it wrong, and fans consistently talking about the bad refereeing and other fans celebrating that some fan bases are not getting the right calls and things like that adds to the drama. And the Premier League is at this point entertainment. You know what I mean? Like it's sport, but it's entertainment, and they love the storyline. They love all of that kind of stuff. And so I don't know if I believe that the Premier League is even desperate to really be getting these things right. I think beyond the Lee Mason situation, what happens on a daily basis in the Premier League where some things happen for some teams and it's not really fair for others, I think they kind of like that because it adds to the drama, to be honest. That's how I feel. I don't think they're in any rush to get it right. You know what I mean? Rav says, I'm a Liverpool fan and have to give you credit. This season really surprised a lot of people, including me, and I want Arsenal to win, as I want a different winner. It's really nice. I'm happy that other fan bases can see that like Arsenal are just plugging along, doing their thing. Like we're largely written off at the beginning of the season for even top 4. So what we're doing right now is astronomical, and it shouldn't be ignored. So yeah, but let's move forward beyond kind of like the refereeing stuff, because we had a really good performance and there were some really good individual performances that have got to be highlighted. So sticking with the attack, I thought once Martinelli scored that goal, he looked so much more like like Martinelli of old. You know what I mean? He just looked like himself again. And I don't know if he just needed the confidence, because the goal that he scored against Aston Villa, I didn't think that would be the goal that would change him, because it was kind of like an open goal. It was kind of obvious, like anybody could have scored that goal. But this one was quintessential, like Martinelli at his best, making that run into the seam, into the box, and putting away, his chance, and doing it in fine fashion. And he just looked like himself. Like, if you go back and watch the game, if you have a chance to, from the moment he scores that goal, the entire second half, he starts doing Martinelli things the way that we know him to do them. Finding space inside, dribbling, finding the pass out wide, like finding his groove again. And so hopefully that is the goal that gets our Martinelli back. I do think that he was kind of playing beneath himself, or beneath the level that we know him to hold himself to. And I was happy to see that. And I thought in the second half, especially, he had a really, really nice performance. And I'm happy for Martinelli. I mean, he has 9 goals and 2 assists this season. It's really, really good for somebody with this. This is going to be his first full season. If he stays fit, this is his first full season as an Arsenal player. He spent 1 season out for a very long time with an injury. Last season, he only kind of played the second half. He could get into double figures, at the back end of the season. I think that would be a really good Martinelli season. I really, really do. So I'm really happy for him. Boy says Martinelli has been crazy for the last 2 months, but people have been slandering him. I don't agree with the slander, but I do think that there was a noticeable dip in form that was a combination of just him not being up to his usual standard, and also not having Jesus there to, swap positions and stuff like that. So I don't love results-based analysis where it's like Martinelli scored a goal, so all of the time that he wasn't playing well didn't exist. It did exist. He hasn't been up to his usual standards since the World Cup. Now, that doesn't mean that he hasn't scored goals, but we know Martinelli is better than what we've seen. And so I don't agree with he's shit and all that kind of stuff, and all that type of stuff I don't agree with, but he was he wasn't up to his usual standard, was he? Amira says, so such a shame he got injured scoring that, because I'd imagine the celebration would have been epic less than a minute after the restart. Yeah, the stomp, that's something that I've seen Arsenal players get red cards for in the past, but they Martinelli, I think, did that to Trent on his follow through in the Liverpool game earlier on, and indeed he did it to him. And so I'm very apprehensive about wanting players to get sent off for things like that where they feel accidental, even though I've seen Arsenal players get red cards for it, like Crystal Palace away, Aubameyang got a red card for something like that. But I was scared that he was really hurt, but I'm glad that he wasn't. Drew says, God, I was shook when he got stepped on, as I was too. I was like, no. Please no. Dev M says Trossard was really influential in the way Martinelli played. Them rotating on the left flank helped because it confused the defenders. We had lost that, when we had a little bit of it second half against Brentford. I remember that's when we scored the goal, when Trossard scored the goal. You just need that chaotic aspect of things when teams want to sit in deep against you. And we had that, and it helped. Stubb says, I think Trossard through the center suits Martinelli better than Eddie does. I feel Trossard drifts out to the left more than Jesus. I agree. Boy says, some of Martinelli's touches that he's made in the last 2 months, some of those should have been goals. Teammates never finish, is all. Fair enough. DMC says, good evening, Jess. Happy Gooners rather late than never. Exactly. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. So yeah, hopefully this is the goal that kind of gets Martinelli back on track. And maybe if we keep Trossard in the team, we'll see some of that fluidity come back in the front line, or sustain it. If Jesus is going to be out for like the next week or so, then I think Trossard does have to stay through the middle. 100%. The next player that I want to talk about is Jorginho, who had another top performance in the game. There's multiple layers to this, obviously, because Jorginho, he had 95 touches, which was the most of any player on the pitch, 68 passes completed, which was the most of any player, 10 times possession won, which was the most of any player, 3 tackles made, most of any player, 7 duels won, 1 interception, and 1 foul won. He controlled the midfield. He was very good. What I do want to see, the thing about having Jorginho on the team is that I think Odegaard has to figure out what he's doing in his role when Jorginho is on the pitch, because I think because Jorginho is so much of a playmaker, Odegaard ends up we lose him a little bit when Jorginho is out there, where Thomas Partey just kind of stays retracted a little bit more. He doesn't really venture into those positions to play make. Jorginho and Odegaard kind of get close, and a lot of the things that I saw Odegaard do in the first half of the season, Jorginho is starting to do now. And so we have a lot of playmakers and a lot of people that want to do similar things, where I feel like it's kind of like a similar situation on the left with Zinchenko and Xhaka. They want to operate in the same positions. There's kind of a redundancy there. I feel like Jorginho and Odegaard need to find that, that vibe and who's going to do what, because I think we lose Odegaard a little bit when Jorginho is out there, because he's such a playmaker, and a lot of the possession that Odegaard would usually have dictating play for us, it's going to Jorginho. So what do you do from there? That's not to say that, I do think Odegaard had kind of a poor game against Leicester. I don't think he's been at his best, but Jorginho was great. And for 12 million, I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but I don't think we get the same results against Aston Villa and Leicester without him. And especially because Thomas Partey is injured or is not 100%. So that's a really smart piece of business. And for somebody that was not loving it when it first came out, I was just so like, oh, another Chelsea player, I can't do it. And again, like, this always goes back to not getting our number one targets, but our plan Bs do tend to work out. And this one seems like it's working out 100%. I mean, his pass maps are great. He does tend to want to be on the right-hand side as well. So again, like, there's a lot of playmaking going on the right-hand side from Jorginho. And so where does Odegaard fit in all of that? They just have to figure out who's doing what. But yeah, Jorginho was really, really good. And the other part, it seemed like the defense figured out how to play with Jorginho a little bit better, because we know that defensively, once you're past Jorginho, he's not going to catch up, and his defensive style is very front-footed, and he likes to get in front and intercept. But when he misses it, then it's kind of like, oh shit, like, they're beyond us. And it happened against Aston Villa. It happened a little bit against Leicester, but you saw, Saliba and Gabriel really had a lot of that covered. And you just have to modify things a little bit for Jorginho, because he's not, athletic. He's not going to be able to outpace anybody. He doesn't cover ground well. But if you can set up well defensively and understand that when he kind of jumps up to intercept things, you have to defend a certain way, especially if he gets beat, then, you're pretty much fine. And I thought he wasn't my man of the match, but I thought he was excellent on the day. Georgie says he was man of the match. I thought watching him in midfield, we all said, how could Chelsea sell him? Matthew says Jorginho versus Leicester, 7 out of 7 long passes completed, 16 passes into the final third. Steve Stone says J20 was my man of the match. His passing was beautiful to watch. Bro Pro says Jorginho liked to find Odegaard. I think Jorginho in this game, I have to go back and look at it, but I felt like Odegaard was just kind of like lost there a little bit. And a lot of the two players that were dictating play for us were Zinchenko and Jorginho. So if they're doing a lot of that, then your eights need to do something a little bit different. And so I just feel like that's a little bit of a change, because again, if you look at some of the things that Jorginho was doing, a lot of that is what Odegaard does for us on that right-hand side. So it's interesting to see how the team dynamics change based on who's out there. Jordan Davis says we need Jorginho and Partey and Odegaard to play together. At the end of the match, we did see Partey come in, and he did come in as the 8. You know, he was more advanced than Jorginho, and it's something that I know a lot of us have wanted to see. I'm not sure how I felt about it because it was such a short amount of time, but I don't imagine that that's going to be an option. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I loved it or not. Because it was just such a short amount of time. Matthew says Jorginho's forward passes and switch of play is so nice to watch. It is. Osman says, Jess, I missed 40 minutes of the stream. Please, can you tell me if you want Watkins at the club and why briefly? Thanks. We haven't gotten to that yet. So if you want to stick around, we are going to talk a little bit of transfers at the end, but we're just I haven't gotten there yet. So just hold your horses. We're going to get there. I promise. Anu Told Legend says Jorginho off the ball pressing was mad the other day. DMC says Jorginho brings exceptional experience 100%. Exactly. Like there's just so much you can say about Jorginho. And from, you guys know me, if I don't love something right off the bat, but I'm proved wrong and it works out, you guys know I'm going to say it. And no, at the very beginning, I was not feeling it. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I was like, another Chelsea player, like, is that really what we want to do? But he's proven to be such a useful player in a side that really looks like it cannot function without Thomas Partey. And we look just fine. And in some ways, we look better because of the way that he circulates possession, how he controls tempo. And I guess my question to you guys is, do you think Thomas Partey has anything to worry about? Because I've seen tweets going around from Arsenal fans, you know, kind of talking about, you know, is Partey potentially in a situation where he could see his position dropped or his position under threat? And I wanted to ask you guys, like, what you thought about that, because I just want to know, do you guys feel like Partey is under any sort of threat? Here's what, like, my initial thoughts to this is like, okay, this is a player that Arteta's always wanted in Jorginho. He wanted him at City. When you read the quotes about what his perfect DM looks like, it's Jorginho. He wanted him before he got Thomas Partey. Could there be a situation where Arteta's like, I'm loving this Jorginho life, so like Thomas sit a little bit, or maybe you move to like a different position? I don't know. I don't know. I need to know what you guys are saying, you know? Let me put the question up so you guys can see it. But does Partey have something to worry about? Y'all tell me. Y'all tell me. Drew says Partey good. He should play for Xhaka midweek, in my opinion. Andrew says, think Edu and Arteta are currently the best at choosing players to buy right now. I mean, I'm sure they're better than us because, hello, they're the professionals. Boy says, Xhaka is the one looking over his shoulder. Georgie says it's a good problem to have. Let's see. Drew, oh yeah, you already said that. Richie said Jorginho so far has been a bit more consistent than Partey, but lacks his all-around ability. Bro Pro says Partey needs to hold bench, in my opinion. Those are big words. Woo! Dev says Partey was undroppable before, but now he misses a few games. It's not the end of the world. Seawalder says, no, I feel Xhaka is under threat from J20. I guess my feeling on that is just because we play so much with one DM that I don't know if I want another DM sitting in an 8 position, because that's kind of how I feel with Xhaka anyway, is that we have a player that would want to play a little bit deeper, that is being pushed into a position up high that doesn't necessarily suit him that much. And I know that Thomas Partey has played 8 in the past, but Arteta has basically transformed him into the perfect central defensive midfielder. And so I think what I more would be interested in seeing is what ESR looks like, what Fabio Vieira looks like. What do these people look like in the 8 position? Because they're more of natural goal scorers and they are more comfortable in and around the box. But yeah, I think this is a good problem to have because we ain't had it in a while. Okay. Billy says if Partey is fit, he plays simple ads. Enrique says, Arik says Arteta should find a way of playing Partey, Jorginho, and Odegaard, rest Xhaka. And Amir says, depends on the opposition, I guess. Yes, Partey's better, but sometimes he's off. Like when he's off, he's really off because his positioning, his misplaced passes are riskier, in my opinion, but he's 100% better defensively. And I think that's really a good point, though, is because at the end of the game, when Leicester were pushing, and they really didn't get anywhere with it, but they were pushing, and I just found Jorginho to be a little bit, lightweight defensively. Like they were running away from him and he couldn't catch them, where we know Thomas Partey has a little bit more of that in his locker. And so my feeling is that even though Jorginho might have been Arteta's quintessential type of CDM and who he like, that's the type of player that he would always want in those types of positions. Because of Partey's all-around game, I do think Jorginho will go back to the bench. But where Jorginho is going to be so important is when we're in Europa League. We've drawn Sporting Lisbon. And I think Jorginho is the perfect player in these European matches because there's more time on the ball, there's more space. He could be so useful to us in keeping Partey fresh for the Premier League, and then he can play in the Europa League and keep the levels up there in a competition and, in a situation where it really suits his strengths. So I still think Thomas Partey is the starter, but Jorginho is giving, I think, Arteta a little bit of a headache there. And I love it. And I don't think it's something that we should be upset by. Also, just sticking with this, I have to say, like, there's a little bit of a side note here when we start talking about competition for places, strength and depth, having Arteta having headaches in terms of team selection, and seeing our favorites sometimes not being the favorites of Arteta when game day comes around. I saw a tweet from a very big Arsenal account that basically was saying, and I'll read it because I need to find it if I can find it quickly. But it was something to the effect of, if we sell Kieran Tierney, here it is. If we sell Tierney for £40 million, there aren't many left backs on the planet we can sign who would be an upgrade. He's just a top player, and our treatment of him makes no sense to me. I hope he performs well in UEFA to remind everyone how good he is. Arsenal aren't so. Oh no, that's something else. So, and he did go on to say Arsenal aren't so rigid that we are only capable of one style of play. Tierney played fantastically when Zinchenko was injured, and we're still dominating everyone with him. I'd like to see him get more minutes, like Tomiyasu currently may get some UEFA top player. I'm seeing a lot of this going around, and I just think we need to get freaking comfortable with players. It's not about being dropped. It's sometimes you bring in a player that suits the system more or is better than the player that was already playing there, and they lose their position. And that's just how it goes. The Kieran Tierney thing, I think, is going to be an issue, because not an issue, but something that really rocks the Arsenal fan base. If he does get sold, I do think people will be thinking more with their heart and less with their head. Kieran Tierney going to Newcastle, for me, seems like a perfect match. The reason for that is because they can pay his wages. They will give us a fee. He's more than good enough to play for a Premier League side. He'll be closer to Scotland, and he'll start there. When I watched them play in the Carabao Cup final, I just kept thinking in my head, I was like, wouldn't it be nice if they had Kieran Tierney there instead of Dan Burn? Wouldn't it be nice if Kieran Tierney was there instead of Dan Burn? I'm not trying to do any sort of squad building for Newcastle. What I am saying is that as a human, I love Kieran Tierney. He's one of my favorite Arsenal players, but he doesn't suit our system. He doesn't play inverted that good, not good enough to be getting into the team above Tomiyasu, which I think is significant. And it's not obvious to sell him yet, so maybe it would be a good time to do it. Now, this whole idea that he's being treated poorly is like a joke to me. He's not being treated poorly. This is what happens at top clubs. Players come in, like Zinchenko, fit the system perfectly, are exactly what Arteta wants, and the other player that was playing there sometimes doesn't get to start. Now, Tierney is somebody who never stayed fit, and now he's playing minutes in the cups, and he's maintaining his fitness. So the idea that Arsenal are doing anything wrong to Tierney and he deserves more playing time based on the fact that we love him and not based on the fact of like tactically and the way that we play, he doesn't suit it. For me, it's just something Arsenal fans are going to have to get over. Tierney is a top player that I think in any sort of team that plays with that sort of left back, they would love to have him. And of course, I'd love to hoard all the talent so that nobody, can use him. But something tells me that getting 30 to 40 million for Kieran Tierney this summer might be really, really good for us because we need a right back. We need a midfielder or two. We need a couple forwards. Like, we have work to do. So, I saw that and I just thought, man, like the Jorginho Partey thing is brilliant. It's so good. The Martinelli versus Trossard thing is amazing. I'd like to see more of that in our team. But I also don't feel like any player that's not getting playing time is being mistreated. Or, they just deserve to be playing because we love them. That's not how it goes. And so we have to get used to that. Also, I think it's key to remember that Kieran Tierney is not an Arteta signing as well. And I think that could prove to be significant as well. Tony says, I'll worry about the summer transfers in the summer. Cousin says, Tierney is great. He represents something to some of the fan base that has nothing to do with ball. I'd love to see him go. So I don't even I'm not desperate for him to go, but I'm also not going to be upset if he does in terms of blaming Edu and Arteta for not understanding and all this kind of stuff because he doesn't fit the team anymore. The team is evolving beyond him and he's too good and he's in his prime to be sitting on our bench. For me, it's not that deep. Georgie says Rodgers would take Tierney in a heartbeat. That's another team that could probably come in for him as well. Albert says, Jess, if we sell him, we need to replace him, but I would love to keep him. I don't even think we need to replace him. I think that Tomiyasu is going to become somewhat of a Nathan Ake for Arsenal, where he can play center back, he can play right back, he can play left back, and he'll fill in those roles because he is the left back cover. Like earlier on in the season when we needed a left back to step in for Zinchenko, who came in, it was Tomiyasu. And so I do think that we need a right back. We'll bring in a right back. Tomiyasu will be the more versatile player. Ben White is also quite versatile. And we have Kivior, Gabriel, and Saliba as center back options as well. I don't necessarily feel like we need to replace him. I think getting a fee for him now would be a good bit of business. And I don't feel like he's being mistreated. I think that's the most important part of this. Emmanuel says, looking back now, do you think for Trossard and Jorginho was the right thing to do in pursuit of the title? I don't really know. I'm potentially because looking at Mudryk now, you can see that there's a little bit of he's trying to adapt to the league and stuff. So maybe he wouldn't be somebody that, would step in straight away and be able to score those goals and stuff. So maybe I do think that there's always an alternative universe where things work out if you did plan A instead of plan B as well. So, if we got Madison instead of Odegaard, do I think that the team would have fell apart and would have been terrible? No. Do I think that if we got Awar and not got Partey, that things would have been terrible if we had got him or not? No. So it's hard to say, but I do think that taking away is it a better option? Is it working for us? Yes. And that's all that matters. So yeah, but the last little part here in terms of the game that we have to talk about is the defensive masterclass from Saliba and Gabriel. And we have our shape back. We're minimizing chances again. We are defending in bunches. We are, committed defensively. And I loved watching that. Obviously, like Shrewsbury Hall was saying that every time they looked up, they just saw a sea of red. And that's something that I haven't seen since like the very beginning of the season, where we were really, really committed. We had a lot of energy, and that came back in this game. They had 0 XG in this game. 0. No chances. I never felt like we were under threat. I got a little when Vardy came in, but that was just based on like the past. They had like nothing going on for them. And a lot of that has to do with those two back there. And I don't think they're getting enough plaudits. I get that there's other center backs at other teams doing good things, but this is a young center back pairing that is leading Arsenal to potentially their first title in 18 years. And I just have to talk about Gabriel, because I think obviously it's a partnership, and like Saliba did really well too, but Gabriel was fantastic against Leicester. Fantastic. I mean, that is the Gabriel that I know. That is his standard. That is it. When he has his moments, it is what it is. But I think this season, especially since he signed his new deal in like October, he has been one of our most consistent performers. Especially a lot of our away performances for me have been a lot like due to what he does. He's just a really, really good defender, and he's committed to it. I love him, you guys. Like, I don't know how, it's like, I love him. I do. Like, I love Gabriel so much. And the two of them were excellent against Leicester. And it's nice to see our defensive commitment come back, because it's one of the foundations of Arteta ball. As much as we talk about the tiki-taka and all the great passing and all the great movement and the nice goals and all that, Arteta first brought the defensive solidity. That was the first thing that he brought. And it's the foundation of the way that we play. And without it, you can't win. And I'm glad to see it come back. But Gabriel just took my breath away in that game, because I love defense. Like, I love a clean sheet, and I love watching defenders do, like, it's a craft, it's an art, defending as well. So it was great watching that kind of come back. And all that like stuff about them having a bust up, that was lame, because they were laughing with each other. But I do like to see that even after the clean sheet, they still wanted more. And I love that. Bro Pro says Gabriel is an underrated leader. I think he is growing. He is growing. We saw that he was raw and a little rough around the edges when he first came to Arsenal, but he is really improving, and he's just a player that people don't talk about. And I don't know if it's because he didn't cost 50 million or because he's not Saliba. I think like Ben White, some of the moments that he's had have become media-wise who he is to, that's who they say he is. Like Ben White against Brentford, that became who Ben White is. It took a very long time for people to even recognize him as a decent player. Gabriel does not get spoken about enough. He's so good. Don One says Gabby is so underrated. Billy says Saliba and Gabriel, best defensive partnership in the Prem this season. I mean, based on where we are in the league, it's true. Wayne Francis says, is your appearance on the Arsenal breakdown show still available anywhere like YouTube or the Arsenal app? I mean, I have the clips, but I don't know if they keep them up or not, but I will be on the Premier League fan zone. I'm going to record it tonight, and I'll let you guys know when it comes out. So I don't know about the breakdown, but I will be on Premier League fan zone soon. So keep a lookout for that. Emmanuel says Gabriel loves away days. He's a monster in away games. I agree. Even though like he had some real, like a silly moment against Leeds, I thought he was a big reason why we won that game, away from home at Leeds as well. Like he's just up for it. And I love that about him. Amira says they need big Gabby header from a corner again immediately. That's what we all deserve. I miss that. I need a big Gabriel goal soon, 100%. Don One says Maguire costs more than Gabby, Magalhaes, Saliba, and Tommy put together. Let that sink in. Billy says, call me crazy, but they remind me of Ferdinand and Vidic a little bit. One more aggressive, one more cultured. I actually think Vidic is a very good comp for Gabriel, and Rio Ferdinand is a really good comp for Saliba. A lot of people say Virgil van Dijk, but I think it's more Rio than anything. And Gabriel has a little bit of that crazy, and Vidic had a mistake in him. But ultimately he was still world class. And so I love that partnership. It's going to be really hard for Kivior to break through in there, but I'm interested to see what he plays like as well, because I think he's a really, really good player too. So I'm loving what we've built defensively in the last couple of seasons. So the last thing I do want to talk about is just a little bit of transfer stuff. We're going to whip through this kind of quickly. I just want to get your guys' thoughts and feelings on these players that are being linked to Arsenal and what you think it might mean. So make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. We've been linked to Ollie Watkins. This is not the first time, but Ollie Watkins has been linked to a move to Arsenal. And yeah, he always scores against us, but like that doesn't matter to me. I do wonder, if, because Eddie is also like quite young, if he maybe at the end of the season might look at his options to see if, he could get more playing time, because I do think he'll want to start games and we'll have to make sure that we bring somebody in. This is just me thinking about the future, not trying to kick Eddie out, but just thinking like he's a young player. He probably wants playing time. But Watkins to me is not good enough for Arsenal. I saw this and I was just like, can you see him standing up there while the Champions League anthem is playing? No, I don't care if he's an Arsenal fan. Like, I don't think he's good enough for Arsenal. But, here's the thing about the center forward position. Am I desperate for Eddie to go? No. I think he's doing great. Do I think there's a chance that he might want to have more playing time next season? Yes. Do I think there might be an opportunity to upgrade on that position? Yeah. So us being consistently linked to forwards makes me think, especially center forward, that there might be a little bit of something, just at least a little bit of looking and seeing who's available and who's out there. But Ollie Watkins to me is just not a player that's good enough for Arsenal. So you can stay where he is right now at Aston Villa. The second player that we've been linked to quite a bit is Lautaro Martinez. I know people don't like him. I know that his performance in the World Cup was highly scrutinized and he really did not come off well then. But in Serie A, he has like 16 goals and like 4 assists or something like that. So clearly he's still a quality player. He would just be really, really expensive. And he doesn't offer any sort of variation really from Gabriel Jesus. I think he's more maybe creative. No, I don't even know if he's more creative. He may be more of a goal scorer than Gabriel Jesus, but I don't see any variation there in terms of like height or aerial presence or anything like that. So Lautaro Martinez, I think, is looking for a move, but maybe because we got Gabriel Jesus, that ship may have sailed. But yeah, he's also somebody that I think the backup striker has to be somebody young that knows they're not going to get a lot of playing time, but has a very high ceiling. So I'd be more interested in that Holland guy that we looked at the other day that was at Atalanta. I think that'd be a better option, or maybe just letting Balogun do it. But yeah, Lautaro Martinez would fit us, but I think that is the type of signing we would have needed to make before Jesus. Do you know what I mean? He kind of fits that same category, and we're beyond that now. Amir says, not going to lie, I feel like Eddie, being from Hale End, he'd at least want to play in CL for Arsenal at least once in his career. Don't see him leaving this summer. The following season would be more likely. That's a really good point. Diane says, Jess' sister is Gabriel Jesus already starting training with the squad. They said that they're hoping that he will be playing again before the international break. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, he's back. Richie Rabbit says, Holland would be much better for a 20-year-old. Exactly. I feel like that's who your how your backup striker kind of needs to be. Not really like an average Premier League kind of striker, and not somebody that is like a real starter like Lautaro Martinez. Like it has to be something a little bit, because you're not going to play over Gabriel Jesus. It's not happening. So yeah, but I wanted to mention those. But the last one that popped up last minute before I started the stream was Sterling. You're linked to Sterling again. Now you guys may think I'm crazy, but I would take Sterling. I would take Raheem Sterling, because like I think I'm at the point where I'm not afraid for Arsenal to bring in older players or players that have more experience. I know that we've been really wedded and really into this youth project, but I think even Arteta and Edu have said that the goal is not to just have a young team. It's kind of what we had to do because we were out of Europe. And so in order to kind of compete, we needed to bring in like the best and brightest young players, because we weren't going to be able to recruit prime age players. We'll be at a point now where we can recruit prime age players. And I think we need to underpin some of this youth with more senior players. I think it's useful. We have a very young center back pairing. We have players that are coming into their prime, like, Ben White. You have Zinchenko, that's a little bit older, but still kind of young. You have Jesus, that's, 25. Martinelli and Saka are still really young. Vieira and ESR are quite young. Odegaard is still a little bit young. And so I wouldn't mind bringing in like a Sterling or something like that, to be honest, because we're going to be in Champions League next season, and I want to do well in it. And everybody in your team, for me, can't be somebody that's never played in the Champions League before. I think Jorginho, Thomas Partey, Zinchenko, and Jesus might have been only players that we have that have played in the Champions League before. And so I would not be like upset with a Sterling type signing, because I think Trossard has worked out so far, and he's a little bit older, and so is Jesus. Not Jesus, Jorginho. But I know some people won't like it because it just feels like we're only going after City rejects or whatever. But I don't really care where they, like, the Chelsea thing is different because, like, obviously there's scars there. But in general, I don't really care where the players come from as long as they fit what we're trying to do. And let's not act like Sterling hasn't been one of the best wingers in the Premier League over like the last like 8-9 years. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't mind bringing in Sterling. Crispy says, I wouldn't say Sterling is a mercenary. I don't think he rushed out of City, to be fair. I don't either, to be honest. Amira says, I think of Sterling as a City leftover, not a Chelsea reject. I liked City leftovers, to be honest. Drew says, Sterling gonna want to sit behind Martinelli. I think not, but we'll be in Champions League. And I think, again, like, we have this idea that it's always going to be like this, where we have only the starting 11 and nobody will be able to break through it. But I don't think we should only bring in kids or young players or whatever that are noticeably not as good as Martinelli and Saka because they're the starters. I think competition is good, and we need to underpin some of these younger players with some experience, because Champions League is going to be a whole nother thing. Next season is going to be 4 competitions where we're expected to bring home trophies. This is the last season where maybe not bringing in a trophy will be like, well, because the main goal was to get into Champions League. Next season, it's not going to be like that. And so you need that experience. And I'm not afraid of it. But I know some Arsenal fans are really afraid to get away from that youngest team in the league thing. And I'm not really that, I'm not really that. Bro Pro says Sterling is like 30. He's 28. Let's see. Crispy says, I need Sol Campbell rerun with Kulu. So, yeah, you guys are saying Kulusevski. I don't think he'll come to Arsenal. He's starting there, and I think he's probably settled and whatever. So, I saw Olise in the comments. I think Tony asked about Olise. I actually am not sold on Elise. I think he's a nice player, but like, that's about it. I think we need to think a little bit higher getting into Champions League. And if we win the Premier League, we'll be expected to try to, even if we don't, we're going to be expected to challenge for it. I really do think we're underestimating our team right now. We're in a point where we can't, like, we went out of the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup so early because we didn't have the necessary backup in depth to rotate without, just going out meekly. And that's not going to be acceptable next season. Winning trophies is all that matters, y'all. So, yeah, I think we need to think a little bit more like, a ready-made replacement because we have enough youth in the team already. George says, Elise lacks intensity. I agree. People love the idea of that player, but don't watch him weekly. I think the exact same thing. I just don't see an Arsenal player in there. I see a nice player, but I don't see an Arsenal player in there. Boy says Chelsea need to worry about making Champions League next season. They don't have any other option. I mean, I do think Sterling will look to leave in the summer if they don't have any sort of Europe. I think he will try to leave, and so like I probably would look at a Sterling type signing, Trossard and Sterling as, options in wide areas. Why wouldn't you want that? I don't understand. Curtis says Chelsea going to have a fire sale in the summer. They will not be able to register all those players, so we could get them on a cheap. Yo-Yo says, I want height, physicality in the forward line. Saka and Gabriel Jesus are the only ones comfortably retain possession. Yeah, maybe we do need somebody a little bit taller and stronger. John says, Jess, if Harry Kane left, is there a possibility he could come play for us? No. He's a Spurs legend. He wouldn't come to Arsenal. I think he'd go to like Man United or something like that. Yeah, for sure. So I just wanted to throw those out there. I knew you guys wouldn't like Ollie Watkins, but that makes sense. I knew you guys wouldn't be in Lautaro Martinez, but I do find Sterling to be interesting just because winning mentality is there, been there and done it before, knows how to operate in the Champions League, has scored tons of goals, could play our way, and would be like not really backup for Saka, but good competition. And we're going to be in a lot of competitions next season. So, and we need to win, so we will be expected to win trophies next season. So I think we need to think kind of beyond who's the little upcoming 20-year-olds and stuff like that, because we already have that in our team. Right now we have plenty of those. Hugo Garcia says Julian Alvarez heard he wants out. I think his agent's just putting that out so that he can get a bigger contract. And yeah, so I wouldn't mind that. Martin L says to imagine we wouldn't have gotten Trossard if we had succeeded to get Mudryk. The thing about Mudryk, though, you guys, is that even though I'm not sure that he would have been able to really help us this season, I think he's going to be a player. He may not ever reach the levels that he should at Chelsea, but I think Arteta knows what he's looking for. So yeah. Yo-Yo says I'm expecting a trophy this season. I mean, as much as a lot of Arsenal fans are throwing away Europa League, I want us to go hard in Europa League. I want us to play strong lineups in Europa League and in the league and try to go for both, because I think we're good enough to really push the envelope right now. I do think we have been, as a fan base, a little bit too okay with going out of cups. And for sure next season, I'm going to expect silverware because this is Arsenal. Crispy says Mudryk would have cooked with us. Chelsea are killing him. Dobbs says bring all the City rejects who actually managed them all this time. I mean, hello, like Raheem Sterling would be a good signing, I think. I know he's on high wages and stuff like that, but I think I'm getting to the point now where I'm like, what kind of team do we need to build in order for next season to be able to fight on all four fronts and win trophies? I think Sterling signing would do it for me. Amira says, agree with you on Mudryk, and what we needed in Jan was players for now, not for the future. Good chance we'd be in second if you didn't get Trossard, in my opinion. So yeah, we'll see how all that, kind of unravels and stuff like that. But Just wanted to put that stuff out there. That wasn't the main point of the video, obviously, because we needed to unpack everything that happened with Leicester. As I said at the beginning of the video, we're going to do a preview for Everton tomorrow. I didn't want to try to do it now because, you know, this gives me an opportunity to spend more time with y'all. So make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new so that you don't miss out on the preview tomorrow. And I will talk to you guys soon. I love you guys so much. Thank you guys for always supporting me. And like I said, I'll be on Premier League Fan Zone soon. So when it comes out, I'll let you guys know. Bye, y'all. Enjoy your evening.